Welcome to Sunday evening at JAMATORA Podcast.
Today, for all game lovers, we have a special episode from the history of games.
An episode devoted to one of the cult family games, which is Rummikub.
And they will lead it for you, Ryan.
And Libby.
Libby, where do we start?
I think, maybe from the creator of the game, Mr. Hertzano.
I agree with you because it's a truly fascinating story, no less than the game itself.
Mr. Efraim Hertzano, a Romanian-born Jew, was living with his wife Hannah in Romania at a time when the authorities ordered all cards and card games to be outlawed under the fascist regime. After racking his mind to find a substitute, Mr. Hertzano came up with an original idea to substitute the cards with tiles.
Hertzano invented Rummikub in the early 1930s and handmade the first sets with his family in the backyard of his home. In 1940s, after World War II, with his family he immigrated to British Mandated Palestine, today Israel. He originally sold toothbrushes and cosmetics. As the former perfume vendor was looking for some sort of occupation in Israel, which at the time was suffering a deep economic crisis, known as the Tsena. In 1950s, in the backyard of his house in Bat Yam, he continued to develop the game.
In the kitchen of his modest home in Tel Aviv, Hertzano began developing Rummikub as a family game. He soon began selling the game door to door, with not too much success, along with other games he had developed.
He designed the game to combine elements of rummy, dominoes, mahjong, and chess.
With its similarity to gin rummy, the goal being to match card suits and numbers, Rummikub was obviously not Hertzano's original invention. But he took the Romanian game, added wooden chips, as well as some of his own rules, and began seeing the first signs of a modest success.
Hertzano's family sold the first sets door-to-door and on a consignment basis at small local shops. The game soon took off, and the family began licensing it to other countries over the years. In the 50s, Mr. Hertzano spent hours in his small workshop, assembling each game by hand, and dreamt about how everyone would play the tile game he loved so much. He would paint each tile by hand, so the small, plastic pieces, and the wooden game box, and assemble all pieces in order to distribute the game to small retailers.
In the 60s, on Saturday nights, friends used to gather around the Hertzano's family table to play, and the enjoyable hours of play soon became a tradition. Often, the Hertzano couple welcomed shop owners and their wives to play the game with them on their porch. They played, enjoyed and recommended the game to their customers. As rumors of the game started spreading and sales were expanding to Europe, Hertzano's workshop grew until it became what it's today, one of the most played family games in the world.
In the 70s, demand for the game continued to be strong. Now aided by his children, they tried to sell Rummikub to the Americans. Well, in the land of the free, the home of the brave and the region of endless possibilities, dreams do sometimes come true. Years later, his son Maicha, after completing his studies in the United States, attempted to make a go of the game in America.
He had little luck, until one day in 1977, as Maicha Hertzano tells it, when comedian Don Rickles appeared on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. Talking about a visit to Israel, Rickles said he was impressed by his wife's obsession with that funny game, Rummikub.
The next day, according to Hertzano, the phones in his office began ringing off the hook. Rummikub had become a known commodity in the United States, and shortly thereafter Europe followed suit.
After America discovered Rummikub, it soon became a best-selling game. From then on, all is history, and skies were no longer the limit.
In the 80s, Rummikub expands as the number of players exceeds 1 million. The Hertzano family issued of new models of the game, improving packaging and choosing distributors and licensees that love, promote, and believe in the game.
In the 90s, the first World Rummikub Championship, WRC, took place in 1991 and set the ground for future tournaments. Since then, every 3 years, the World Rummikub Championship is held in different locations around the world. This tradition brings people from all over the world together to enjoy, compete, and make great memories together.
In 2000, nowadays Rummikub is a worldwide known brand played by millions of players, young and old, sold in more than 50 countries and translated into 26 languages. No barriers of language can overcome the joy and interest the game creates. Rummikub is now available for play in all devices, web, Android, Apple and Facebook apps.
The story of Rummikub, it is about great vision, willpower, and lot of optimism while representing the joy in life. Hertzano, now 50, and president of the multimillion-dollar family business, Lemeda Light Industries, is the first to admit that the game did not originate with his father, who died in 1987.
There are only 10 original games in the world, and all the rest are variations, he says. Whether the game is original or not, Hertzano says that Rummikub is Israel's leading exported game.
In a recent year, some 600,000 copies were sold in 34 countries, he says.
This is the fascinating story of the Rummikub game, whose conception is obscured in the past, over 70 years ago.
The game started as a brilliant idea that had occurred to Mr. Hertzano to substitute the traditional cards, used in a popular cards game, with colorful tiles and new gameplay.
That idea, through faith and passionate dream of tiles rattling all over, finally materialized. Accompanied with a vision just as bright and as grand as the initial idea, it became an overnight hit.
This year, 2020, Rummikub is celebrating 70 years anniversary.
And this is the end of tonight's story. Let's go and play Rummikub.
Yep, let's go.
Thank you to everyone for the time spent together.
And we invite you to the next episode,
as usual on Sunday,
at the same time,
10:30 p.m.
Good night, and see you soon.